Really for us, this was a game that was, was a little, had me a little worried because of conference starting this weekend and, the game before, after the weekend. And, I thought our guys showed up, they were into it.
That was Dave Van Horn there as we get ready to start SEC play. Welcome into PTN Extra. Always good to have you every week with us. Alyssa Orange alongside Mike Irwin. Courtney Mims is going to join us to talk a little basketball. But Mike, let's talk baseball. You hear from Dave Van Horn. They've gotten through this non-conference section of their schedule, and we start SEC play on Saturday. And I'm really excited to see Arkansas start SEC competition, despite the fact that they start with Missouri. But before we jump into what this league looks like, let's just take a look around the league at where some other teams are right now. You've got Texas A&M, one of two teams undefeated on the season at 17-0. Georgia and Tennessee, 17-1. Georgia's an intriguing team for me, and we'll talk more about them. And I know you've got your own opinions on Tennessee as well. Alabama, LSU, 15-2. Vanderbilt, 15-3 on a 9-game win streak. Arkansas, 14-2. But the Razorbacks, the number one team in the country because of their strength of schedule, Mike, who they have beaten, and probably maybe the best battle-tested baseball team in the league right now.
Yeah, they've got 10 quad one wins, and that is equal to the total quad one wins of all the other ranked SEC teams. So, I mean, they played a tough schedule. They've been tested. Their pitching staff has been tested. Their hitters have been tested. And you can look at some of those numbers from some of these other SEC teams, and I'm not saying they're not impressive, but who have they played? I stayed up pretty late last night watching A&M try to avoid their first loss of the season. They were up 9-8, and then Sam Houston tied it up, and it went into extra innings, and they finally won it because of Sam Houston's pitcher blew up and walked the bases loaded, then walked in the winning run. Not a necessarily impressive game from them. Was impressed with their fans. They've always had good fans, and they had a good crowd there, for a weeknight, a midweek game. But I like what Arkansas has done. I like who they've played. I like what they did against Oral Roberts, because when you play a midweek game, you typically are going to have to score a lot of runs because you're going to pitch 4 or 5 of your own pitchers, and it's not maybe your frontline guys. You might have 1 or 2 of them in there. Somebody's going to give up a few runs. And so you might have to score 6, 7 runs typically to win a midweek game. They only scored 4. Wasn't a good night at the plate. I think they were affected by being number 1. That's always the first game, number 1, you're like, whoa, we're number 1 in the country. We can't blow this. So they didn't hit very well. 6 hits, 4 runs, but they held those guys to 2 runs. And the other thing I like about this pitching staff is they pitch well under pressure. We talk about Arkansas leaving runners on base. Yeah. Arkansas forces other teams to leave runners on base. Bases loaded. So runners at second and third. These pitchers get out of jams as well as anybody I've ever seen, and a lot of times with strikeouts.
They do, and you talk about strikeouts right now. They're second in the league behind LSU. They've got 208 already on the season. LSU's got 211. It's interesting you say that about those 4 runs, because Dave said yesterday at his press conference, 4 is like that magic number. They feel like if they can get 4 runs on the board, they've got a really good chance to win ball games because they believe in their pitching staff so much.
I mean, that's just huge. And we've seen, honestly, most seasons we sit around and talk about Arkansas's team batting average and home runs and things like that, because that's what you have to win. And this time around, those numbers don't have to be, they're getting better, but statistically, Arkansas is obviously up there nationally in pitching, but nowhere near, they're not even in the top 50 in batting categories. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't matter when you can hold people to 2 runs a game, and their team staff ERA is 2.7.
Yeah, it's incredible. I wrote down notes just like you. We've got our pad and paper out here, but A&M right now leading the league in ERA, 162. South Carolina, 215. Arkansas in third right now at 279. And it is those batting numbers that jump out to you. Arkansas right now, number 1 in only 1 category. Do you know what it is? Do you want to guess?
You're going to tell me.
I am. Ground into double plays.
Okay.
They're number 1. They've grounded into more double plays than any other team in the league right now at 15. It just, again, the offense is going to come. Peyton Stovall's back in the lineup, and he hasn't skipped a beat. And so it'll get there. Kendall Diggs is feeling more comfortable. He had his 3rd home run against Oral Roberts, but the pitching right now has been so impressive. When you look around the rest of the league as you get ready to start this gauntlet, What has stuck out to you the most?
Well, what stuck out to me is all the SEC teams that are ranked in the top 10, and not just in statistical categories, but the actual ranking. It's a tough league, and everybody's playing well. Now, they may not all be playing the same quality of competition, but Arkansas is getting ready to play Missouri. Statistically, they're the worst team in the league, because most of these other SEC teams, even if they're down near the bottom, when you start looking at their stats, still pretty impressive. High team batting averages, pretty good pitching. The league is just tough. It's always tough.
It always is tough. A team not on the schedule, though, is Tennessee. They only have one loss, but you always come in here. Mike comes into the office fired up about Tony Vitello at times, and it's pretty funny to watch, but you're a little fired up with Tony right now. And it's
Don't care for him.
The Vols, well, okay, but the Vols are pretty good.
Yes, and one of the things I know about Tony is that when he pops off, and he tends to do that, he does it when he thinks he's got a good team. You won't hear a peep out of him if his team's struggling a little bit, if they're not really good. Well, he's been popping off a lot, so that tells me he thinks they're pretty good.
Mike's take notice. I like Tony Vitello. I got no problem with Coach Vitello whatsoever. All right, let's talk about a surprise team. Is there a surprise team in the league so far for you?
You were saying Georgia?
Georgia. It's impressive for me. You look at Georgia, they've got that offensive gauntlet right now that Arkansas doesn't quite have yet. They've got a guy right now with Chris Condon who is literally leading every statistical category offensively in the league right now. But Georgia is a team that we saw kind of starting to come around these past couple of years. Alabama as well. If you remember, Alabama lost their head coach in the middle of the season last year to a betting, gambling, weird controversy thing. And they're sitting here right now also, you know, with LSU, I believe, 15-2 in the league. So you're looking at a league where you're like, okay, Mississippi State, Ole Miss, LSU, Florida's, South Carolina's, those are the teams that we need to beat. Oh, by the way, Georgia's good this year. Oh, by the way, Vandy's still good. Oh, by the way, now Alabama's a problem. You don't have an off
by the
weekend.
way, Florida's not what they thought they were.
Oh, Courtney will come on. We'll give Courtney some heck when she comes on to talk basketball in a little bit. But you know what? Maybe they should work on their defense. I don't know.
Yeah,
it's
it could
okay.
be.
Maybe those freshman pitchers. It's early
Been
in
down
the
at the
season.
Pizza Hut too much.
Yeah, you know, I wore blue for Courtney today to make her feel better, so it's fine. but you look at this league, and it's going to be a lot of fun. And it's going to be a lot of fun in the last season before they add Oklahoma and Texas. And I believe that we could get to the last weekend of the season against Texas A&M in College Station, and that be for an SEC title, maybe the SEC West.
And we deserve some fun. This has been a kind of academically, this academic year has not been good, you know. The two sports you kind of count on, football, right down at the end, and it was really bad. And then basketball was bad from totally not what everyone expected. They've rebounded some. I tend to cut them more slack than most people. I think the fans have given up on them. Looking at the crowds at the last two home games, when maybe 6,000, you don't get the real numbers there, but maybe 6,000 show up for senior night, even though they didn't really have much of a senior night. That's insulting. Yeah. That's your fans saying you didn't give us what we wanted. So I kind of am pulling for these guys starting tonight. I want to see them do something really crazy. Bobby Bones was going through this thing. I don't know if you saw it.
I did
but
on
he was
Twitter.
Analyzing
and
each
he said
game.
He wasn't really that biased.
Yeah, it wasn't biased, but then he had them beating everybody and winning.
Right.
And I tweeted after that. I said, "Yeah, this is an expert analysis." And when they do this, it's going to erase all bad stuff. You know, Chad Morris, he doesn't exist anymore. No John L. Smith, no Susie Gardner, you know, no 69 game that you lost in football. All that stuff just goes away. The College World Series thing, drop foul, that all goes away when they win the SEC tournament starting tonight.
All right, we'll see. Well, that's a great segue to what we're going to transition to before we leave. Baseball starting their series with Missouri and SEC play. Those games on your screen Friday night at the ballpark at home at 6:30. Basketball on tap right after this. Welcome back to PTN Extra. Courtney Mims agreed to join us even though we kind of bashed your Gators.
Yeah, I don't feel
He
great
started it.
about that. You started it, and
You
you said
started
you
it.
wouldn't.
No use for the
I
Gators.
was going to be nice and not bring it up.
You even wore blue, so
I did. I really like this jumper. Blue looks good on me, unfortunately. But
Well, I did not wear orange and blue today. I'm done with the Gators. It's done. Let's talk about something else, okay?
basketball, and this is the future. You know, a lot of people, like Mike mentioned, I say given up, but have moved on from this basketball season because it has been so tumultuous on fans' hearts and energy and hopes and dreams and all of those things. But you got to look to the future, and a lot of people want to know what's going to happen. So many questions about what this team will look like, what this coaching staff will look like, what's even going to be beyond the SEC tournament. Do they turn down an NIT bid, and what does that mean if they do that? And so I'm curious to get you guys' thoughts on what this basketball team's future holds for them.
I think for me, the biggest question is even beyond the NIT and all of that is just who is coming back next year. And you mentioned the players, the coaching staff. For me, the big talk of what last week was Caleb Battle and his comments that he made after their games, and I can't remember which one it was, but he made a
LSU
comment.
game.
The LSU game,
Yeah.
thank you. And he made a comment where he was like, I'm a Razorback until the end. And then he came back out and tweeted something of like, guys, I'm just focused on the SEC tourney and finishing out the season. I am not focused on whether or not I'm coming back or not. So it's kind of mixed messaging there for me on his return. Does Tremont Mark come back? Does Devo Davis come back? He does have another year of eligibility. So that's a question mark for me as well. We also know that there have been a lot of coaching rumors this season and going into this off season about will Eric Musselman be with the Hogs, and that's still something that we're watching with that Louisville job opening up now. That's official. They have an opening there. Musselman
There's
might
been a
be
lot of
rumored
words
to
and
go
talk.
over there. I don't know.
We don't know.
We need to kind of get those answers to those questions before we can even talk about the future of the team. I'd like to know who's coming back.
Yeah, and I think you make a really good point because, Mike, I'm curious. If Eric Musselman is the head coach of Arkansas basketball next season, does he learn from maybe the way that this year played out and not be transfer portal heavy? Yet he's already talking, I guess, interest in a guy from Penn.
There's
so we
already
don't know.
rumors that he's already looking at the portal. That sort of tells me that he's coming back, but it doesn't necessarily mean that. But he's doing this awfully early. So there's that. I still think, yes, there's going to be that's his MO. I don't expect one or two guys to come in here. I think there's going to be we know they're going to need at least two bigs because they're losing two bigs. And maybe three. So there's that. I think he's probably going to go after another forward type, 6'8" guy, maybe a power forward type. And I think he needs at least another tall guard. He keeps talking about we need tall guards. So I think at least 4 portal guys, maybe 5. I just think as long as he's here, and especially now with the way the portal works, you're just going to see him do that.
Yeah, you know, I'm curious. As we talk about that, the thing that's popping in my head is development. Do we invest in continuing to develop Layden Blocker and Joseph Pinion and the guys who are here that have years of eligibility?
Well, you just look at Blocker. I mean, at times he looks really good. At times he looks really bad.
But he's a freshman.
I know that, and that's what I'm telling you. In the past, it wouldn't matter because he'd be around his sophomore year, he'd be around his junior year, and you would see him develop. But now, what happens if you don't immediately come in and do a lot of things as a freshman? 2 things really happen. If you're really good as a freshman, you're off to the NBA. And if you're not, maybe you're gone. That's the sort of way it's gone lately.
And I just don't like that, Courtney, because I have seen teams that guys who have developed and been and played under guys who are the SEC preseason player of the year come their junior year. And Moses Kingsley is a guy that jumps right out of the book for me, and a guy who was patient behind Bobby Portis and was really, really shined when he got the opportunity. You got to give these kids opportunity to grow.
Yeah, the example that comes to my mind is Tennessee this year. I mean, look at the guys that they had come back. Look at the experience on Rick Barnes' roster this year. You can see how much it pays off to have guys in your system develop under you and then go on to the next level. It's just, it works. It's not how it is in basketball anymore, unfortunately, with the NIL, the transfer portal. All of these things have kind of created so many different issues when you come to keeping guys in. It used to not be a question, and now it's, okay, how do I keep them to stay? Do I have enough money? Do we have enough resources? And that is something that every coach at every level is feeling. But you see the benefits of having guys in your system. I'm looking at you, Tennessee. I'm looking at you, okay?
Yeah, and it's, again, UConn is another great example of a team that Purdue, we have seen teams that you get guys when you need them, but to develop the guys that you have as well. And there is a happy medium there, which is why we can sit here and talk about the future and predict it all we want to, but we ain't got no idea.
We don't.
Because we have never been right on this men's basketball team since the minute that Eric Musselman stepped on this in Fayetteville, because things are just different and times are changing, and the NIL and the transfer portal, and we would have never thought that we were going to see another 4-year player, and we finally got one.
Remember
with Devo
COVID
Davis.
and what a weird deal it was?
So weird.
And now it's a bad memory, but it's gone. However, I think that while this has lasted longer, the whole portal thing, the whole NIL thing, I think it's going to get solved, because I'm looking at all of you right now. Nick Saban was on TV, went in front of Congress, and he said it. And you need to listen to this guy, because he's the guy. Now that he's not a coach, I think he becomes a spokesman for college football. And he said, if you don't fix this, the fans are going to reject it. Now, look, that doesn't mean every fan, because I read the controversies when people are talking about it on X, and there are younger fans that think it's great. But what are they actually saying? What they really want is the NFL or the NBA without the NFL and NBA rules. In the NFL, you got a draft that equalizes things. You got a salary cap. Right now, you got no draft in college sports, and you got no limit on what you can do to get somebody to come. When you create that, the fans go, no, because all you're doing is buying championships. I got a bag of money. I'm going to buy these players, and we're going to win. And what do you have when you do that? Oh, boy, you had more money than anybody else. You're like the guy down the street that built a giant house. His house is bigger than my house. He's cooler than me. Whoop-de-doo.
It's interesting, and it's played a big role. And we don't even know. Buckle up, because the postseason, the off season for men's basketball is right around the corner. Probably sooner rather than later. We don't know. That's going to do it for this week's PTN Extra. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week.